Hello and welcome to Nilme Talk Show. Uh, Today we are here with one more talk show. Uh, Actually, this is the first talk show we are doing in English. Actually, we've been doing in Kannada. A few of our friends and well-wishers asked us to do in English as well. So we are trying one. So today we have Dr. Nandakishor MS. He's a associate professor in Pondicherry University. He's in the Department of Politics and International Studies. He's also written a few pieces of uh, on multilateralism and many other things. So he's a learned scholar. So it's a pleasure having you on our show, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Sir, as we speak, I mean, our subject is the Russian-Ukraine war, and it's in the sanctions and ongoing things. As we speak today, the Ukraine and Russia is in a negotiation table. That is the best part, because from for 5 days they are in war, and uh, there are many speculation. So, in that perspective, I just want to ask a few things like when Russia started this war, the people thought it would be a cakewalk. There was a narration that Russia would have conquered the Ukraine in a matter of hours, but it took at least almost 4 days now, and Russia is not at reached Ukrainian capital city. So, do you think it was not the war has went not as expected when the world has expected it?
Let me first thank you for this forum as well as your initiative itself. You've always taken very important initiatives with regard to current affairs and international relations, and I'm very happy to be associated with you and your organization at the outset. I'm sure there will be many more viewers and many more queries to what we are doing. Now, coming to the specific topic that we're talking today, a lot of people are of the impression that Russia has just begun an offensive, whatever that's been seen since few days. But having observed international relations and also having taught India's foreign policy, India's worldview, and many other things which involves relations with many of these countries, I've been keenly following. Spring of 2021 itself, Russia was preparing. Russia was getting ready to do something like this, and the Ukrainians were very clear. It's very open sort of a scenario that whether it is Poland, whether it is Ukraine or Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, any of these Soviet Union states, former states of the Soviet Union, all of them get petrified the moment Russia does something. So here is also a classic case. And what you are asking, that Russians probably took it light, and they were also the impression that Ukraine will be taken over in few minutes or in just a day or two, if that is the type of thing. But what we also have to recognize is that though openly not weapons and other things being given by the NATO as well as other members or other countries, there is a proxy that's also happening. A lot of them are giving things in secret, and they're also supporting the Ukrainians in a different way altogether. So maybe I'm sure I don't want to underestimate Vladimir Putin, because he's someone who's extraordinarily intelligent person. He hails from KGB. I'm sure all of our viewers are also aware that he's a very smart guy. So he knows in and out of what happens where, and he also knows that if he pulls off something like this in 2022, and what would be the reaction from the world country. So he's aware of all these things, and he has made an assessment, but he might have probably assessed and thought that it might get over in 3 days or something like that. But it's going little more than what he anticipated. He might have even thought, like his previous what is aggression, where he had taken over a portion of
Crimea.
then Kiev. So in the same way, probably he might have thought that this will also happen. That might have gone wrong. I agree with that one. But apart from that one, I think he never goes wrong in his assessments. That's my hunch whenever it comes to Putin, having at least also trying to teach political psychology to students and being a student. I can very firmly assure you that he is not an easy chap. He has seen so many presidents of the United States. He has seen so many Chinese presidents, and he's someone whom we just cannot underestimate.
uh, uh, Talking about underestimate, I think Ukrainian leadership has underestimated the Russian power, or they had some overconfidence on themselves, or the support of NATO, I believe, because by looking at their position, it was an impossible war to go. But still, they have adventured it and they have landed up in this trouble. I think it was lack of visionary leadership, or it was just they went with the ego kind of things. Or how you assess
It's
this?
a mixed bag, I'll tell you. See, even a cat, which is weaker in front of a bigger animal or a human being, when it's pushed to the brink, it tries one last time. So that's my analogy, if you ask me. It tries one last time to go on an offensive. On the one hand, it's a mixed bag when you compare leadership. One, knowing the capacity of a state and what it can do and it cannot do. This is where the whole of international relations works only on understanding why do leaders do certain things the way they do. You know, in that one, this is a very pertinent question because for an individual's ego, and you are trying to match something like Russia, which has never been conquered in the history of mankind. I'm telling you, whether it is Alexander the Great or Hitler, or for that matter, Napoleon Bonaparte, nobody ever could conquer Russia or face Russia in that manner. Even Americans could not do it because of its own folly. The Soviet Union collapsed. That's a different issue. But otherwise, it's not easy. So I see Zelensky's mixed bag approach here. One, he is little overconfident of the NATO support and the United States coming in. On the other hand, he thinks that if he doesn't show up, probably his people will see him as a weak leader. Being a former Soviet Union state, he needs to put up a brave face. He also needs to provide that sort of a scenario to his people that they should think that he is capable of pulling off anything of that sort. So at times these type of decisions can lead to disaster. See, what happens is leadership survives. Leaders will have their own ways of dealing with it. You just because you adorn a military outfit, you do not become a military personnel. That's what Zelensky is trying to do. He's trying to make the best use of the social media. He's trying to make best use of whatever social media that is available to approach to people and create a narrative that the one who is suffering is Ukraine, and the one who's getting that sort of a pleasure by aggression is Russia. You see, this is the type of message that he's trying to send across, but the cost is very high. Is the people who are suffering. That's what we are worried about, not about leadership egos and many other things. These things will always come and go, and later we have seen great leaders rising, falling, everything has been seen. Great nations have also risen and fallen. But the thing is, the suffering that the common people go through is something that the leaders have to be sensitive. Sacrifice is a different issue,
Yes.
right? Sacrifice and those things are when there is something that could be resolved in some other way or in some other manner. If that's not explored, that overconfidence can be very, very problematic. I'm no way saying that what Ukrainian leadership has done is absolutely wrong, but at the same time, probably it could have mooted international leadership in a different way rather than just appealing there. Here, he could have approached, and I think the Russian leadership was open to talk. Right from the day one, he's been very clear, and he's been telling about certain problems that are associated and where he wants to negotiate. I don't think they've ever said that we are not open for
Yes. Yes.
negotiation or we want to take over Ukraine. I don't think you will find a single mention of that one by Putin that he wants to take over, Ukraine.
In fact, he has written open letter to Ukrainian people. I mean, it's kind of a love letter 1 year back, I believe, where he said there are many fancy and many interesting things he has said. But in spite of that, it went because I feel Putin has stretched a diplomatic arm more than the Ukrainian people, because they were in a fantasy that NATO may come and help them, because they were doing big talk shows, and end of the day they didn't turn up, and they that was just a lip service for them. He was very desperate. Uh, but here I also see that, the Lord Krishna has said, when you are not capable of fighting a war, it is better to pull back and get into some negotiation. So it's always better for both. Here, I think Ukraine has failed.
True, no doubt about it. I think there where one needs to be a good student of history, One needs to know one's own capability. One needs to make assessment of what we are capable of, what we are not capable of. I've always said this in international relations: knowing the extent of power and is important, but knowing the limitations of power is greater, much more important than the extent. Uh, uh, can you even withstand something like Russia? That's something that you need to know. And every day you can't invoke NATO. Every day you can't expect United States to come in, or every day you can't expect someone else to come and do anything. So at the end of the day, they'll be hand in glove, because the Chinese may say, we are watching, we don't want any aggression to happen. Tomorrow they will expect Russia to support Chinese aggression in and around, or at least, if not support, they would want them to keep quiet. That is exactly what is expected from every other country. I think every other country is an aggressor in one or the other way. The same UK is an aggressor when it comes to an island in Argentina. Right? They haven't given up on their ambitions. France, for that matter, or United States, for that matter. Everybody has been in one or the other way. I think so. Certain things are well written. And for Soviet Union, Ukraine is very, very important. We know that bit of history from time immemorial, and they would not want to see that way, because the Ukrainian what is the population is layered. You have a population that thinks absolutely that it has to be Ukraine and Ukraine only. There is other population which thinks that we gave enough time for Ukraine after the breaking of the Soviet Union, or the collapse of the Soviet Union. We gave enough to the Ukrainian leadership to rise and do something for the people, or behave better in international system, and then bring prosperity. That has not happened. So we are a bit dejected with our own leadership and people. So we are heading back to Germany. Sorry, we are heading back to Russia. And then you have a third one who are absolute fans of Russia, and you have the Russian population, you have the Russian ethnic population as well, who are absolutely with Russia. That's what we saw in the previous one when Crimea was taken over. That was the one which was seen. So you have this three-layered population within Ukraine. Now it's not to be projected the way it's projected in a lot of the media, that as if the whole of Ukraine is opposing Russia. Had it been, Putin himself would not have tried to pull off anything like this. He knows very well that he also has support. That is precisely why he is opposing the way Ukraine is using the human shield. Because Ukraine knows they have to pull off something like this. They have to have a common population, or the general public, so that international media and others will show, look at the way women, children, and everybody is
Yes,
suffering.
yes, yes, yes.
This is an issue. So, but Putin is very, very clear. He is a military strategist. He knows things in and out. So he's telling you are doing what we call as human shield. This is wrong. We should not do this one. If there is a war situation, you face it. You come. If you have accepted to fight back, you fight back. Right? Because Ukraine is also claiming one after the other that we have cleared another
Yes,
city, that
yes,
is Kharkiv. They said they have cleared Kharkiv, and then we are no less to the Russians, and
yes,
we will continue to fight. If
yes,
you have already got into that one, you are in a fighting mode. You are not showing that you are a weak one, or you are going to lose. At the same time, you shouldn't be using human shield,
yes,
giving appeal to people to take up arms, and then you are calling them that this is one last resort that we need to
yes,
do.
yes.
You should have thought about this much before.
So again here, uh, but I see a different situation. Like America has made NATO particularly against the aggression of Soviet Union or Russia. The very reason their presence in Europe is to uh, encounter that. But when it comes here, I mean, when they have to really counter the aggression, they are moving back. So it's quite strange for me. I again go for Trump last time when he said, because I mean the America one is funding a lot of money for NATO, and the European countries are enjoying trade with Russia. So the point of NATO is not being served. So how do you see this?
See, for me, as you mentioned rightly, 1949, when the NATO was created, the very clear thought was that it has to stay there, otherwise, communism will spread, and it needs to have a control. So, across the Atlantic, it wanted to have NATO, and it did. Now, my question goes back to all the Western powers, including the European states. After Crimea, why you did not include Ukraine as part of the European Union? If not, at least as part of NATO. They don't have an answer to this one. Now suddenly crying, you and making you and cry, and then trying to make it dramatic and all those things. After knowing Crimea, the Ukrainians went through, let's imagine that they went through a crisis. You had enough time till now, and any day it could be anticipated. As I mentioned to you, all the former Soviet Union states have a hysteria in their mind about Russia. In that case, why you did not help Ukraine by making it a member of NATO? Had it been, Article 5 of NATO could have been directly applied here. Attack on one is attack on everyone. Things could have been resolved, and Russia would not even have thought about even an action like this.
So here, I believe there is one great
It's
saying.
hypocrisy.
Yes, but Ukraine situation, I believe there is one saying in Hindi, "Dobi ka kutta na ghar ka na ghat ka." That is what.
Might be. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't find Ukraine's presence so important.
Yes.
They don't find Ukraine with that much of utility. But then be plain. Then be straightforward and say what we require from Ukraine, what we don't require from Ukraine.
Here, in fact, the Chinese ambassador to UN, I believe, have said one interesting thing. Though may we not agree many things what he says, but one thing he has said, being a geostrategic position Ukraine holds in Europe and Russia, he would have been a bridge between Russia and West. He would have the country would have played like a bridge. It would have connected the Russia. Would have eased up the relationship, but it went. It happened otherwise. Though it became the cause of conflict for both Russia and Europe.
It is always, see, this is in international relations. For our viewers, I'm saying that this is called as the buffer state problem. Now, any buffer state for that matter, when it's between or when it is sandwiched between great powers, this is always an issue. I'm telling you, this is in Second World War. Poland was a buffer state. Both the Germans wanted a pie, the Russians wanted a pie. Both agreed at some point of time, let's share whatever that we can and let's not fight each other. Then Hitler went on an aggression and things changed, and we know the course of Second World War. That's a different issue. But Ukraine for me is a buffer state here. Which we imagine that could be a bridge state. Unfortunately, it is not so. Now, problem is also that going that close to is a fear for the European Union itself. Had they been really committed to it, they could have done this one. They could have really stopped this embarrassing situation for the Ukrainian. It's an embarrassing situation for the NATO also.
Yes,
People will
yes,
point out.
yes.
People will point out because the United States is not having a formidable leadership. It's suffering. The leadership lacuna is very clearly seen. They're unable to even make very clear and strong statements. Once you say sanctions, next
Yes.
moment you say I can't sanction.
Yes.
Once you say I'm going to do something to Putin, next moment you say something else. You see only a confused messages coming in here.
I'll come to later that part, sir. That is an interesting question to be asked. But I want to know how India played in this situation. Did India played well?
Indeed, see, I'll tell you, there are situations in diplomacy for normal citizens, divided on ideological lines. For someone may simply say India is not showing spine; it should speak up or it should condemn someone's aggression. The second part is a a learned level of people in the society, because you may have a lot of intellectuals in society. This is what Antonio Gramsci says, but not all will have intellectual work. Just because you make an omelette a day, or you press your clothes, that does not mean that you become professionally that. Everybody has their own ways of looking at it. So in that scenario, for India, one has to be very, very clear about whether this is absolute aggression or there is something else more than that one. Second is knowing diplomatically how to play well. International relations does not work like a supermarket. You just go do whatever you want or buy whatever you want. Then okay, next morning you have nothing to do with. You have another option to go somewhere. International politics is not like that. For us, Russia is a very, very important partner. For us, Russia is someone whom we have looked up to in the past, and we continue to look up to it. Even in 2021, we stood ground by very, very clearly saying that when United States said that we will sanction you the way they did to Turkey when we brought S-400, we said go ahead and do it. It's our strategic autonomy that we want to do something, we'll continue to do. We get the best from the world. Then people did not have an issue. Why Indians never made an issue out of saying that one? Why are we buying S-400 from the Russians? That time, Putin did not become a dictator, or that time Putin's Russia was not an aggressor. Putin's Russia was always an aggressor, whether it was Stalin's era, whether it was subsequent era, whether it is Putin's era. We have always seen all these things are happening. Do countries stop having relations with other countries just because they have a different ideology or they have different type of leadership? If that is the case, United States should not be having with Saudi Arabia. The promoter of democracy should not have been having relations with the theocratic state.
Yes.
Right. So finding fault with India that we haven't spoken absolutely against Russia is a faulty way of looking at it. Diplomacy is not that white and black. If you ask me what is the job of a diplomat, I say first thing to lie. So it's not to promote just yourself or anything of the sort. See, national interest, right, which is above everything, and then followed by making sure that your country gets the best. From that perspective, India is saying, no, see, there are different ways of saying things. You can say certain times, certain things, but if they are not validated or if they are not respected, you will end up losing whatever minimum respect you have. Just by India saying or calling Russia as an aggressor, do you think Putin will stop being an aggressor?
No way. No way.
Not going to stop. Even United States saying that, China saying that one, the superpower saying that one, UNSC members, permanent members saying that one. What are we talking about? India saying that one. If India says, or if Putin says a country like India can negotiate or it can come, then it will be a slap on the face of those
Yes.
UNSC members.
Yes.
That's a different issue. But we saying you are an aggressor, you stop this one, we stand with the Ukrainians. Tomorrow, Ukrainians will not have legs to stand with you.
Yes.
So diplomacy works in a different way. Morality and diplomacy don't go hand in hand.
Yes.
So we getting emotional about something like that, perhaps we are losing sight of realism. We are losing sight of our future. We are losing sight of lot of things that happen in diplomacy. So diplomacy is not as simple as being spoken or being written in newspapers or somebody trying to prescribe you morality,
Yes.
having not understood even morality itself has loaded politics in it.
So it more goes behind the camera than the front of camera.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I don't mince words with regard to that. Let me be very, very black and white with regard to. Even if people say these are what is a realist hawks or anything of that sort, I don't mind at all. Because my country's national interest is primordial. And for that national interest, leadership does certain things. Yes, we have put up saying that one we are concerned and we know what level of things are happening. Just imagine a scenario. We say something to Russia. Tomorrow, our interests with regard to the permanent seat is jeopardized.
Yes.
Second, when the Chinese are going to be aggressors, and then we say, how can the Chinese do this one? This is not acceptable. The Russians will have a laugh and say, okay, that day you called me aggressor, now you call the Chinese aggressor, and see what will be the outcome.
The way we are treating Ukraine now, because all the way, they have.
See, the Ukrainians, for
Yes.
that matter, have been much more problematic for us with regard
Yes.
to the Indian students and the others. They have not been sympathetic. They have not been respecting our requirements. Our students are stranded. There are a lot of people who are stranded, and we are making our own efforts too. But even in this type of a scenario, it is behaving badly. It's not working in a conducive way to help out people to get evacuated.
Yes.
Probably they would want these people also to be the human shields. Who knows?
Yeah,
That's not
maybe.
acceptable.
Maybe. So, sir, my next part of the question is now, what US can't do as a NATO in ground. Now they have gone back to their age-old strategy of sanctioning countries. It's been a traditional way they have been doing it from post Second World War. So, but it was okay when United Nation was very powerful, but now in a multilateral world, so does these sanctions really matters? How these
I have
sanctions
always,
implications?
I have always said time and again, sanctions are counterproductive. In fact, sanctions will make states to become more self-reliant, and it will bring out the best out of them, and they will do. Let me give an example. As early as 2014, when the Americans thought that sanctions will make marvelous difference, and because the SWIFT code has to be used by all the people across the world, the Russians said, "Okay, fine, you try doing something like this to me. Let me come out with my own ways of looking at it." They came up with something called Russia has its own component called as SPFS. This is called as this is the own messaging system. After all, Swift is a messaging system,
Yes.
nothing more than that one. But they thought this will be a financial burden and they will struggle and all this. What did they do? They came up with their own, which I called as SPFS, which is called as the system of transfer of financial messages. This is called as. The Russians came up with this one. Today, it has 13 million messages per day. There are more than 400 financial institutions that are associated with SPFS. So what did you do? But at least keeping them as part of an international monetary system, whatever that we have, we could at least control them to an extent, and they would have also been bound by certain things. Now you made them independent. Now you gave them extra leg. Now you have given them a chance for their own population to research and do something for their own, for that matter, anybody. Tomorrow, if India is done, will you keep quiet as a citizen of the country? You will bounce back. This is what was done to us by the Americans as part of technological sanctions after 1974. Did we stop doing anything like that? In fact, that came up in 98 in a different way altogether.
The cryogenic engine, they stopped technology, and India end up in developing our own cryogenic engine. Now we are more Atmanirbhar in space program than before.
We launched for them as well.
Yes.
Finally, even the Americans had to get their vehicles launched by us only.
Yes.
At a shot, we did 104.
Yes.
That's why I'm telling you, sanctions can be very, very counterproductive. You thought sanctions will bring out something from the Iranians. What did the Iranians do? You're unable to do anything to them.
Even Korea.
So that's not the right way of doing.
Yes.
Perhaps there are much better way and better methods to contain someone. I think those have not been thought by any of these countries. I think it is more like, let's say, signaling that sanctions are used just to show immediately that I've sanctioned and then make yourself to look good. I think from that perspective, it is okay. But if you ask me the practicality of how the sanctions will work, perhaps many times it boomerangs, many times it embarrasses you. That's what is happening with the United States now. Now United States feels embarrassed that it cannot do anything beyond.
No, in the sanctions also, for me, I have started looking few news reports, and I felt it's very funny because there was a news in the Bloomberg yesterday that United States won't be sanctioning on US crude oil. Because Saudi has refused to keep the price low, because Saudi is their partner in many of the things, but they have refused to keep the price low. The oil price is going up, and it's creating problem in US domestic consumption also. So in the same way, Italy want sanctions on Russia, but it want at the same time it want Russian market for its sofa. The titanium for many of the US space program, they want it from Russia. So it's all very funny. I mean, they are not even the conviction of sanction is also, I don't see from the NATO. It's very, it suits to their country, their self interest. So I find it is very funny, sir. Hello.
Here, on the one hand, the convenience means that every country is looking to promote its national interest. What did the United States do? It told India that you stop buying oil from the Iranians or reduce drastically, and it wanted to be a supplier. Directly burdening the Saudi Arabians and others, thinking that, okay, you come to my market, you put control on someone, and you force them to buy from you. Right? The Saudi Arabians are also watching. And secondly, they've been keeping quiet this long because they wanted certain technology. They also wanted a bit of better weapons from to fight out Iranians and a lot of other things. That is there. But when they also know that you are vulnerable, they will not listen to you. Now they know that United States is not as powerful as the way we thought before. It is because of a system that they are very, very powerful. By looking at individuals, if you look in, perhaps this is the weakest. Had it been Trump, I still challenge at this moment, Americans would have been absolutely different. And that man, Trump, knew different ways to deal with, and he would have dealt in a different way. By all means, I think he would have just walked up to Putin and he would have spoken. I think he was that confident to speak to any bad leadership or any strong leadership across the world. So here it's very simple. Whether if the Italians are not listening to you, then what are the type of or what type of a superpower that you are imagining about? So I
That's
think everybody is playing their best, just knowing this is the right time to hit the bullseye and you get your work done.
Germany is getting its cheapest natural gas from Russia through pipeline.
Absolutely.
Uh,
They're all heavily dependent. The whole of Mediterranean is absolutely dependent. And choking something like that will only lead to more disaster. The Europeans are heavily dependent on the Russian gas. And also the Russians are absolutely, capable of disrupting even others' supply lines. It's not going to be easy. Just you cut off the Russians and you try dealing with others and you think that you can manage. Absolutely not. I'll give you one example. The Turkish president, Tayyip Erdogan, Erdogan thought that he can play bad with Putin, and he shot down a Russian plane and all that thing. For a moment, everybody thought, okay, now see, look at Turkey challenging the Russians, and Russia has gone weak and all this thing. In 1 month, Putin made Erdogan to run to him. What did he do? They supported the Kurdish population, and across Turkey, bombing started happening left and right. And by the end of the month, Erdogan ran to Putin, apologized to him, and he said he wants a better relation with Russia. He doesn't want to do anything. So Putin has different ways of arm twisting. So if someone thinks that trying to sanction Russia or trying to stop Russians from doing something will just keep it aside and then Russians will suffer, is perhaps the most foolish thing that one can do in diplomacy.
So, but looking at this war on a 20th or 21st century, it has changed the perception on geopolitics. Like, uh, it has opened the door for new possibilities of thinking, new possibilities of strategy. Weak and a strong is not just the might of war machines you have. It's also the statementship, what you show, what you deliver, how you negotiate. I think that matters more than the war machines you have these days. What do you say, sir?
Absolutely. See, this brings us back to those statements that were made in the previous era, centuries ago, that human beings by nature are quarrelsome. That is one. Second, even in 1648, when the Westphalian peace treaty came, everybody thought now everything will get all right. It did not. It did not stop so many wars that happened. I think wherever we find, as it's like the rules. You come up with a rule, we come up with a loophole of the rule. It is like that, I'm telling you. So 21st century is no different from that one. I think there are loopholes. Probably you put up a very pertinent question asking the role of the United States, United Nations. The
Yes.
UN itself as a system. I think the future will be very, very clear, where even if a small agency or an organization that fails, we may say you have become like UN. I think we'll end up saying that one. I think so in future. So that's on a very, very light note. I said, but
No,
that's the future.
Modi ji has told you, and it's time for you to
Exactly,
change your
exactly.
yes,
Because that's how you have become toothless. You
yes,
are not ready to accept newer ones. On the one hand, you have become so redundant.
yes.
You are not still ready to recognize some of the countries that have risen up over a period of time, and you are not ready to admit them to the United Nations Security Council. You
Yes.
still think that we are a colonized country, we are a weak country, or anything of that. So that's the first mistake. The moment you expand your UNSC, you have a range of options that are available with you, and you have to also recognize the capacity and the quality of certain nations over a period of time. Over 100 years now, things have changed drastically. So the UN needs to be much more pragmatic here. That is another part. Without that one, I don't think that we are approaching towards anything that is concrete. It will continue to have, this is like a feudal system started 100 years ago, or going closer to 100 years, let's
Yes,
say
yes,
45
yes.
onwards. It's been there, and you are not ready to change. You are not ready to admit newer members. You are not ready to change your structure. There are so many problems associated with, and you are not ready to even take ideas that are coming from many of these countries, which have been very, very successful over a period of time.
I mean, even in during the Ukraine crisis, UN has issued a statement on the Rana Ayub that you might have seen, that the journalism is in a great threat. That kind of statement. I find it very funny because it had other big issues to deal, but they won't do it. even during the COVID time, it was like, the World Health Organization was just like a puppet of China. Whatever it acted, almost in the interest of China. So uh, again, sir, the league collapse of League of Nations ended up in World War II. So how are you seeing this,
I
United
understand
Nations?
where you're hitting. You are also asking the failure or the collapse of the United Nations. It won't collapse. Also, it's a very typical state where they will tell you that you are in ICU, but you're not in. Or let's say much better analogy is that you are in coma. You neither die nor you are there. You want to give euthanasia, it doesn't happen that way as well. So it's in that sort of a condition. I think this is absolutely a brilliant time. Debate on restructuring the UN should happen, and a lot of people should come in, and newer members have to be brought in certain very important positions so that we can push towards a rule-based world order. Otherwise, if with the old structure, you expect Russia to keep quiet, you expect China to keep quiet, that's not going to happen. So it's the responsibility of the UN now, and those countries which are high-headed to admit and accept, bring in a debate, bring in newer players, make the UN much more stronger so that it also doesn't die a natural death. So that is the need of the hour. Otherwise, there will be many more aggressions. I think because it is Russia, it became much more important. Otherwise, some time ago we saw Azerbaijan going for something like that. Africa, Ethiopia is fighting for that one. There are others who are fighting that one. There are a number of them which are happening at different scale. But the thing is, because a former superpower is involved, a nuclear power is involved, it is bringing a different dimension to it. Apart from that, I don't see anything that has stopped. I think what's continued to be there, there might be a small scale, and then a mid scale, and then a higher scale. So we are not expecting a higher scale sort of ones where many more are involved, but at the same time, it has also not brought in absolute peace. It's continuing to happen in one or the other form. That's my submission to you.
Sir, to conclude this, how do you see the future of this conflict? How it's going to end? What do you see?
I think the Ukrainians will tone down their ego. The Ukrainians will now accept to meet at Belarus because Lukashenko. They think that he is an agent of Vladimir Putin because Lukashenko was saved by Putin when the whole fiasco happened in what do you say in Belarus. Now they were resisting. They were saying because the troops were stationed at Belarus, and they had a problem with Belarus. Now they know that if they continue to do that one, or if they continue to resist, it's going to open up a different avenue altogether. So now I think they will go for negotiations, but again they will request saying that Russia should absolutely stop aggression. It should fall in line and say that it will not continue to trouble us. At the same time, the Russian leadership will also ask for other things, including demilitarization. It will also ask for many other things. I think the negotiations will begin. That's my hunch. It will not last long. But at the same time, if anybody tries to mess up, if anybody tries to do anything over smart with regard to dealing with Russians, the Russians will go on the assault. The Russians don't have what is a dearth of what is a weapons. Neither they have dearth of their willpower to go ahead with. They have shown this in West Asia. They have shown in different parts how long they can sustain and what they can do. They have gone up till North Africa and Libya. They have done everywhere that is possible. So underestimating the Russians is problematic. Rather, diplomatically, more positively deal with the Russian leaders. You try to sideline them, they're going to become more and more prominent. So rather than that one, bring them in and say we are looking forward to a peaceful negotiation. Rest of across the country, I think people should pronounce and say that we look forward to a peaceful negotiation and an outcome from this one, and it should stop. So only the humanitarian part can stop this one, not the egos. Is my submission.
So, as India says, always diplomatic way is the only way to end up
Absolutely, absolutely.
any problem. So, hope this war will end soon and both will come to terms. So, thank you, sir, once again for talking us on our show, and we'll meet us again time. So, thanks for having.
Thank you, Mr. Shetty. I look forward to.
Thanks, sir.
Take care.